You guys should see. First of all, you shouldn't hear me, but
You don't hear
No,
it?
no.
We do see the logo.
That doesn't. That's just your headphones.
hello, everybody. Welcome to CarolinaCon online. We're going to go ahead and get started here. It's 7 o'clock, ready to go. We've got a couple of announcements, and then we're going to go right into our first presenter. First announcement is about the presenter. We had a change of schedule, so our first presentation is the .NET and NVIDIA zero-day talk. We are going to We had to remove a talk from yesterday, so some of the schedules, some of the talks got shifted up an hour. You can see that on CarolinaCon.org at the actual schedule page. Second, we're going to be streaming on both YouTube and Discord. If you are in the Discord now, you should see we're live, but you can join us on the YouTube as well. The official chat is going to be in the Discord. We have not enabled the YouTube live chat. Everyone who is a admin or operator in the Discord, if you have any questions about any of the streamers or any of the events we're hosting, the CTF, etc., you can @at any of those people, DM them directly or in the general chat, wherever works best. Also, we just recently had the admins the operators rather, who created the badge post in the general chat. If you have any questions about the badge, you can ask them directly. They're very willing and open to talk about it. If you haven't seen it yet, feel free to check it out at our merch store, which we have a link to that also at CarolinaCon.org. For the CTF, to access the CTF, you should be able to go, registration should already be open, but you should be able to go to ctf.carolinacon.org and register there. We are about to make that go live. Just as a note about some of the point scoring there, all the points for each challenge, they start off at 100 and then they become weighted based on how many people solve the challenge. So for example, the more people that solve one particular challenge, the fewer points it has, and the fewer people that solve a particular challenge, the more points it has. And that way, instead of actually categorizing them into easy, difficult, etc., they are just automatically weighted based on how the CTF goes. So keep that in mind as you're doing these challenges. Ones that are solved fewer are going to be worth more challenges. Okay, so I think we can move right into our first talk. This is, actually, let me go ahead and just move into the presentation because we just had to change this. Matt Barrett will be able to do, we will just hear his intro on his presentation here. This is pre-recorded, so it should all be good to go. And we will transition to that talk now.
Hey, good evening. My name is Matt Batten. My Twitter handle is redvuln, like red teaming and vulnerability research. And my talk is on .NET and NVIDIA O days. So For .NET, obviously it's under Microsoft and NVIDIA for the GFE, and I'll go more in depth to that. So the first slide, of course, I have to go about myself. Who am I? And that's my wife and my best friend and all my animals. The animals are very important to me, and they're crazy. So like I said, my Twitter handle is redvon. My email, if you want to hit me up or ask me any questions. I enjoy having technical discussions or talking about whatever you like. And the company I currently work at is 6gen. I had 7 jobs in 2 years, and I was not happy. And I've been working at 6gen for almost 3 years now, and I don't plan on going anywhere else. And I'm surrounded by the brightest and some of the smartest people I've ever met, and I've never been the smartest person in a room. I'm very grateful that Ethan, our CEO, took a chance on me, and I'm still working here, and I love it. So yeah, I'm a husband, red teamer, dog dad. I'm a Marine Corps vet. I was in signals intelligence, and I got out and I've been doing this, and I'm also a cat dad. So what we're going to be covering is the thought process, the tools, the actual examples, and closing thoughts. So the reason I put it out like this is because I want people to be able to watch this talk and then actually understand and reason, their way on how to actually find vulnerabilities. It's not when you watch this and by the end of it, you should realize, oh wow, that actually was not that hard. Like, I got paid for the .NET O-Day Prevest by Microsoft. Like that's real. And like the NVIDIA one, they acknowledge it now. There's gonna be a link at the end. I got the CVE for that. And I think anyone could find it with a basic understanding. And after watching this and reading some other researchers, work, which I'll go into. So the thought process. There's so many different ways to do vulnerability research, right? There's code analysis, the static analysis, dynamic, and then there's the behavioral, which I would say that I'm more right now behavioral analysis, where I do things and I watch weird stuff happening, and then I work backwards. Eventually, I get to the code analysis portion, but I start behavioral, which is not as technical, I would think, and say. Someone might disagree, but I'm trying to get more into driver O-Day exploitation and everything. I'm really motivated at that right now because I really want some kernel driver stuff, because I want some O-Day Prevest on Windows 10. It's like my big thing right now I'm going after, but that's more starting out static and then working the other way. Great researchers who published their work got me to where I am now, such as James Forshaw, whom I really look up to. I'd probably like the next step in my dream goal would be sitting next to him for 2 weeks and just listen to him ramble or talk about how he gets to where he is. Where even I reread some of his blogs sometimes and I still only understand half. So I just need him to explain to me like I'm dumb. And then Matt Nelson, his research, Enigma is what he goes by, and he has a great blog that I like reading, and it helps find some vulnerabilities as well. And my closing thought, and like the thought process is like, why does this matter to a company or a government? Like why, like if you're watching this, you're not a vulnerability researcher, why should this matter to you? And I say to that, like the SolarWinds issue, there's been so many issues, but that's just one of the most recent, where companies who were patched and up to date ended up being vulnerable, while companies who fell behind and did not patch properly on time ended up missing that. Obviously there's other vulnerabilities when they don't patch on time, but every time you install new software, you update software, something's different, you end up introducing more things onto the system, into the network, and it can always be more vulnerabilities. There could always be more issues, and or maybe it's more secure and completely locked down. But from what I've seen, whenever new software is updated or new software is added or something's updated, there's been more issues than fixes normally. And then the tools that we're going to talk about, there's a lot of tools. There's more like nitty gritty, like IDA Pro and Ghidra and things like that, if you actually want to do some static analysis, like reverse engineering. But for this, and that's why I'm going to say it's simple and it was fun and easy, is a just process monitor. So Windows Internal Suite tool, you can just see what's going on, and it shows the API calls and everything. And then James Forshaw's tools, he actually made his own tools, so he's super legit. Like create symlink, like create hardlink, things like that. And I'll talk about that later on. You'll see it. And then having virtual machines, understanding how they work. having VMs just be able to reboot them and keep your machine up helps a lot. If you test your own host machine at home, though, you'll probably end up finding a lot of vulnerabilities from things I'm going to talk about from random software you've installed or downloaded. So here's Procmon. This is just what it looks like on your screen. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this, but a lot of people don't know that use it, which I find fascinating, that you can actually enable boot logging, where if you do enable boot logging and then you restart your computer while keeping Procmon open, it actually will show you everything that happened up to the point of your computer booting up, or like when you open up Procmon. So it's all those services and schedule, or all those services and tasks that started during the boot process, and you can go and see like what DLLs are getting called, what files are being created, things like that, and see if there's any way that you can bypass or elevate or do something interesting. Obviously, they're locking down on that and they're doing their best. But there's been some really funny ones. At my previous talk, because the NVIDIA one just got disclosed the other day, I couldn't talk about it. But I talked about a bypass UAC O'Day, which was just a DLL that was getting called a system. I think it was a process create or load process, or yeah, I think it was process create, where it was just calling the DLL. It was like some API legacy DLL that ended up getting called. But for this, you can reboot that. And obviously, the filters are some of the most important. So you'll see here that it has like reg open key, reg load key. These are some of the ones I look at. This isn't one I always use. This is just an example. You see process start. I think that's actually what was called, I believe, for that bypass UAC, not the process create. I believe it was process start. I can't remember. Maybe it might have been load image. But anyways, a bunch of filters you have. It does different things. Create file is harder now because of some mitigations put in place by Microsoft. We'll talk about that. I take out things like I try to take out like integrity level, like medium and low. You can take it out, or you can I filtered in integrity is high, integrity is system include, because if I can get from if I can get a higher system from a medium integrity non-admin user, then that's a privilege escalation, right? If somebody's medium integrity with admin and I can get to high integrity without something popping up, then that's a bypass UAC. That's still that's still worth something. That's still interesting and valuable. So I see a lot of people just looking for system. There's still a lot of ways around that. But these are just some examples of filters. There's more out there you can talk about or go into. But I'd say filters are probably one of the most important things to learn about Procmon and understanding from other people's work, methodology, getting it together. So this is the .NET local privilege escalation. So this actually affected like all of .NET, or I think most of the versions, like going back, or maybe it was an older one when I did it. Or it was actually the recent one, but I tested others going back and they all worked as well. And I found it really interesting where, so Microsoft, they did not give me a CVE, but they paid me. I think it took them almost a year. Uh, it was really interesting. I emailed every now and then, but hey, they paid me eventually. Here I am. I'm happy I got it. I wish I got a CVE. I've emailed them 4 or 5 times. I never got a response about a CVE. I don't understand how they could just pay me and not give me a CVE, but I guess money is still nice, right? So I'm not going to complain too much, even though I'd really like a CVE, obviously. Anyways, so this is really important. So the path redirection mitigations, right? So they had, I actually took this from the Blue Hat talk a Microsoft employee gave. I believe it was a Microsoft employee. It was from his slides. I have the link at the end for his YouTube talk. But I thought it was an amazing talk, and it goes into like why mitigation is getting harder. Like when you do create a junction, right? They'll immediately mark it as a medium integrity level. So for services that follow like the high, it's saying that it's gonna screw you over because you're gonna hit medium. So now you can't just do basic junction to get that privs you want, or even the temp. See, when it was temp was a huge attack surface, right? And now due to mitigations Microsoft's putting in place, it's getting harder to stay logical, which is why there's always logical vulnerabilities, and the people like James Forshaw and others, they're always going to find ways around it, and I hope I find a few more. But that's why I'm looking more at drivers now, because I think it'll be really fun and a little bit easier. I say easier, we'll see, but I'm having a good time with it. So where it started on the .NET. So the .NET LP, or local privilege escalation, it was really stupid. So I was sitting there and I was on my host machine and I was just running procmon. I just filtered like I showed you earlier, but a little bit better, where I did create file and a query open, stuff like that. And I did things running a system. I looked for name not found, and then I saw, because if something's not found, name not found, it's getting called a system in a user writable directory, right? C user, that's cool is the user, and app data, that's a user writable directory. So anybody can write to that directory, which means why is the DL being called a system in a directory that a user can write to? So that's the easy privs. But the issue is, how many computers are affected by this? Is this just my host machine? Is this some stupid software that no one else uses in the world? Why does this matter? So I saw that happen. So then I started working backwards through procmon, and I was wondering, like, okay, this is getting called. Where is this getting called? So I click where the extensions.dll was. I see the SVC host, but then I just took off all filters, and then I walked backwards, and I found out it was .NET. And you can see there the actual create file .NET tools, right? That shows as well, like, okay, it's probably has something to do with .NET, even though it's not .NET, but oh, okay, like that obviously stands out. So then you see, oh yeah, I should probably tell you, like, system integrity there, right? Path not found, name not found. Huh. It's really interesting. Name not found system.net. Okay. So then I go, what happens if I just drop this DLL, right? This is working backwards. This is not the most technical. And somebody could have found this from the other way if they actually dug into the code. But this is just, okay, WPTS extensions.dll, there it is. I drop it in there, and I have complete access to that directory. Yep. See user app data local, and you'll see that, was it full control? That's for, yeah, but you see desktop cool has full control, right? So but desktop cool, so he was an admin when he installed it. So this is where it gets weird. So right now it's just a bypass UAC privs, because you go, okay, the person who can drop a file in there is an admin. It was medium integrity and everything. Like, okay, you can bypass UAC if you're an admin, you drop in there, because it has to be the user who installed .NET, right? But you see the permissions there where it says desktop cool allow full control in the admin. So then when we get here, I know it's really small, but there's a load image. I know it's the blue, but there's a load image WPTS extensions.dll to SES, right? So that means as system it ran the DLL, which means you get, that's a bypass UAC ODay right there. But then you go, okay, well, is there any way this can actually be a privilege escalation? So then if you look here, I walked backwards through procmon, and then I realized this registry key was getting modified. And you can actually see that the way it's supposed to be is the path. So the environment variable, or it's the environment path, HK users.default environment. And the path here is supposed to be percent user profile percent, app data local, da 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 da. And then they made it path C user cool. So I was like, man, and then added on the .NET tool. So I was like, so when .NET is installed, it modifies that path. So when that service runs, it's checking that path. It's actually calling this path, and instead of going to percent user profile percent app data, it's going to the user who installed .NET, which you have to be an admin to install .NET, right? So right now it's still a bypass UAC, but then what installs .NET? Like what does install it? Boom, it's MSI file. So it's the installer. So C1 is installer. That's where MSI files are when you're installing stuff, right? And it ends up being like, because of that, I realized in the registry key, it checks the registry key path and it runs it. I clicked forward already. I can go back, but so for the .msi file, ends up when it's running, it runs as integrity, or it runs as the user you currently are. So, and then it modifies that registry key, right? The reg set value. So there's a .msi. It goes, okay, well, who can run the .msi file in C1 installer? And that's why I did the iCackles, so you see that. C1 installer, everyone can execute them, right? Read, execute, X. And you can do iCackles, look at Microsoft Documents, and get a better understanding of that. So you go, okay, anyone can run the .msi file. So then there's ways you can search for which MSI file it was. I ended up just running them all. But you can actually do a like fine string search for DLLs and things like that. There's a great talk. I gave his name at the end of a reference. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But he wrote up a really good blog where he actually talked about my blog about this and his blog goes in such detail and his write-up's amazing on he's like .NET Spy and actually like went in and looked at the code level where I just did like behavioral analysis and figured it out from randomly clicking and being sporadic until it worked. I'll show his name at the end, but his write-up's amazing. If you go to the link, he explains it really in depth. But the gist is here. Okay, so now it's an ODay privilege escalation exploit because it goes. You work backwards. Okay, a DLL is being called a system. Okay, it's being called a system. Where is it being called at? In the user writable directory. Okay, but only the user who I am, he's an admin, can write to that. So other users can't really write to it because it has to be this user specifically. Okay, well, why is it calling in this path? Oh, it's checking this registry key. What modifies the registry key? Oh, well, it's when .NET was installed. When .NET's installed, it's calling this .msi file, which modifies that registry key. So then, if whatever user runs the .msi file, it modifies that registry key with that user's name. So if it's a guest user or a basic user, then you just run that MSI file, then place a DLL in there, and then reboot the box, and then you have, or restart the service or whatever, and then you have a system callback, and that's an ODay priv-esc right there. I'm clapping in my head. That's a lot. I know it's kind of a lot. But then just going on to that, like something to add on. This is NVIDIA, the GFE LP, right? So local privilege escalation, where they just gave me this the other day. I couldn't talk about it the last talk, but I'm glad I can talk about it. This one where this actually, this can actually be an LPE. It can lead to code execution, and there's other things you can do with it. It's really simple. And when I show it, like this one's more simple than the .NET one. The .NET one's simple from like you didn't have to go in assembly, you didn't have to use .NET Spy, you didn't have to, like I clicked my way through and just banged my head on the wall until I figured it out, which is, like I'm getting more into assembly and like doing the drivers, but this is just showing like, man, like CVEs, like this is not that hard and it's not that crazy and anyone can do it. I hope this motivates some people to go and do it. Where like, so for this one, okay, so that was the version of GeForce Experience I had, right, on my box. I need to upgrade my machine. I still had I still have a 970 to be honest. I definitely need to upgrade my graphics card. If you're watching NVIDIA, you hear me. But anyways, no, it's nice enough that they acknowledged it and gave me the CVE. But what stands out here is that so the operation set rename information file, and I saw that it replaced one file to the other. And Matt Nelson, I think, actually has a great blog about it. And there's a few others, but I remember it, and I set my filters for stuff that other researchers have found. So this is really a collection of people who are smarter than me, and then I patch them together to make my own methodology, which I think a lot of people do, hopefully. But so here's the Procmani event information where it actually shows, okay, the operations is set rename information file, it says success, and then you see the path, C program data, NVIDIA, NV stream SVC, the file, okay, and it says file name old.log, right? So you see that if you look up and down, so SSAS current.log, SSAS old.log, so replace if exists true. So that's crazy. So in my head I go, okay, if this is running, so it's running as system, which you'll see on the next slide. But if it's running a system, and I can just do a symlink on this, where and like Microsoft, their mitigations are like create file, right, injunctions and stuff like that. But like I don't know about the operation for set rename information file. So I figured I'm like, okay, well, I'll give this a shot on a symlink from James Forshall's tools. So if you look here, you'll see, okay, nv-container.exe to set rename information file. There's PID, cool. And we see that the path is getting called successfully. And we're seeing the details, the replace if exists true for that file name again. Okay, so we know that the current.log replaces, or it replaces, the current.log is replaced by the old.log, and it runs this user, or runs this system in user rival directory, right? So the whole point here is you can see that the NVStream, SVC, everyone has full access. So we all have full access to that. And then we see that everyone has full access to the NVIDIA Corporation directory. And the reason this matters is that to do a symlink, you have to have the empty directory. So I wondered, I was like, okay, if I can delete everything in nvstream.svc, if I can just delete that directory with everything in it, and then create a symlink to that file, will it actually work? So you can't just create a symlink to a directory that has files in it. The directory has to be empty. So you have to be able to have permissions to delete everything out of it. So there's some other interesting vulnerabilities that go into that. But we know that we have access because of these two. So NVStream SVC, full access. So we delete NVStream SVC. So then we have this. So then we go ahead and we create a symlink. And this is the syntax for that, right? So we're creating a symlink to the SAS current.log to whatever we want, which I did move.dll. I don't know why I did that, but that's just what I ended up doing. And I create a symlink from SSAS current.log to move.dll. Why is that? I think in my head, okay, well, you know that it's writing that file. So during procmon, you know it's like if you restart the service or reboot the box, you know that for the example, like a POC or proof of concept, right? Like if this file is seen, so because the symlink's there, the service goes, okay, this file is there, but instead of doing the old.log, it goes move.dll in system32. And that proves, because in a basic user context, it proves that I can create a file in system32, not as an admin and not a system. So I'm a medium integrity normal user, and because of that, I can well, not because of that, but because I'm a medium integrity user, and it followed my symlinks on that service, and it created a file in the system32 directory, then I know that I then have a privilege escalation, because a basic user shouldn't be able to write a DL in system32. And understanding integrity levels is huge here. Like you can see it says system. So like most users at home, if you do a whoami/all, you're going to be a medium integrity with administrative permission administrator, right? And then when you like right click CMD and do run as admin, you're then, if you do a whoami/all, you're a high integrity administrator, right? And then you can kind of do whatever you want. You can get system easily with like PS exec, whatever you want. But a lot of people don't understand the integrity levels, because they'll drop in a box and they're immediately, they'll be in high integrity on an op or system or whatever, and they especially like if they're just throwing internal blue or something like that around. But so that's the context here. So medium integrity, not an admin, just basic user like on a company network, and then you figure it out by creating a symlink, restarting the service. And again, like you could probably work this backwards instead of doing what I did. If someone actually like dove into the code and did some static analysis and then saw that the file was getting replaced by the other file, and then did iCackles or access checks or whatever, and then saw the permissions, they go, okay. And there's that's more high speed low drag, because they're actually like, man, like I looked in the code and I saw this while I just ran procmon and watched what was happening and goofed around until I got something, which is it's kind of cool. But these are my references, and so Google Project Zero is symbolic link testing. He's amazing. I've already talked about it. The Cisterna suite, obviously, and IT-Man. That's the guy who I was talking about, where he had a great write-up for escalation of privilege for .NET. And he actually goes like .NET Spy and actually like deep dives on that instead of like all the behavioral analysis that I did. And the YouTube channel, that's the one from Blue Hat, where he talks about the mitigations of cybersecurity, things like that. And the next two links are the actual NVIDIA ones where they show the CVE and they grade it in the actual acknowledgments. Yeah, if you enjoyed this talk and you'd like to know more, you can check out my references on the slide earlier. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'll answer any message as long as it's not something like really creepy. Um, but that's my Twitter and my email. And what I like to end this talk on is that companies need to be aware of the stuff when they implement new software in their company, and when they upgrade or update things, that it could open up more vulnerabilities, more possibilities, and like how dumb these logical vulnerabilities are, and like someone does not have to be a super hacker expert to get a basic understanding of, oh man, like a DL is being called a system in this user writable directory. That like there's ghost DLLs and everything like that, and they're just super simple. They've been around a long time, just like unquoted service paths, right? Where just things aren't quoted out and there's spaces, and people replace them in their user writable directories. But like I said, there's a lot of great researchers who provided their information on the internet, and because of that, I wanted to give my support, hopefully, and this motivates some people and gets them started on their path of finding vulnerabilities and getting more excited and getting CVEs. And hopefully my next talk will be more on drivers and some sick Windows 10 LPEs, and eventually the next one will be RCEs. It's a dream. One can hope. I really hope you enjoyed this talk. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And again, feel free to reach out to me. All right, thanks. Bye. Hey, good evening. My name is Matt Batten. My Twitter handle is redvuln, like red teaming and vulnerability research.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Matt Batten, not Matt Barrett. Sorry about that, Matt. That was his talk, zeroday.net and NVIDIA GFE Vulnerabilities Explained. At 8:10, we're going to be back with Rumham with a pre-recorded talk called Ahem, Your IPv6 is Showing. In the interlude, feel free to chat with us on Discord. Join the CTF if you haven't. If you have any questions, like I said, reach out to anyone who's an operator or an admin. And we'll be back with Rumham's talk at 8:10.
lesson here, baby.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are about to get started with Rumham's talk. Your IPv6 is showing. A couple of quick updates. So one, our CTF is having some technical difficulties right now. I think the scoreboard is unreachable, but we're about to get that back online. So apologize for that. This will be the last talk for tonight, but we're going to be online. The operators and admins are going to be online. If you have questions about the CTF or the talks, if you have questions for the speaker, feel free to join the speaker stream whenever they're available. Other than that, we will get started again after this talk tomorrow at 10 a.m. But let's go ahead and get started with Rumham's talk. Your IPv6 is showing.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for virtually tuning in to my talk. My name is Matt Schmidt. First off, I'd like to thank CarolinaCon for putting this all together virtually. I'm sure it was not easy. Um, and I can't wait till we get back in person and can all nerd out again together. But until then, I'm just happy that I have a platform where I can share something that I found very interesting, and I think others will as well. This is actually a talk that I submitted last year, which was approved, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, was canceled. Fortunately, however, this talk has greatly improved since then, so this is a much better version of what would have been presented last year. But anyway, I do have some bad news for some people. Your IPv6 is showing. So before we jump into the content, do a little who am I on that previous slide there. My official title is security engineer, but I'm essentially just a penetration tester at Triaxiom Security, which is a company here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a meetup founder and organizer of Queen City Skitties, which is a once a month group where we like to meet up and kind of talk about offensive security related topics. However, since we're all nerds, we like to just talk tech in general. So we've had some pretty cool talks like home automation, hacking hospitals, defending hospitals against adversaries. We just have a lot of people come from all different backgrounds, like hobbyists, students, professionals, entrepreneurs. So definitely encourage anyone to come on out to that. I am a military veteran. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 4 years as a mortarman. I am a future Cybertruck owner, and I throw this in there because I used to think it was super ugly, and now it's grown on me. And I like to talk to anyone who is considering getting one or has a reservation for one. I am a bourbon enthusiast. I have a little collection going on here that you can see. And then on to the boring stuff. I have a bachelor's in information technology, my OSCP, EWPT, and SEC Plus. So let's talk about what we're going to see here in a little bit. We're going to do a quick IPv6 overview, a story time, which kind of prompted this entire talk to exist. And then we'll do some considerations for an external pen test for both the attack and defense side of things, as well as for an internal penetration test when dealing with IPv6. And then we'll wrap everything up with a conclusion at the end. So, very brief IPv6 overview. The IP address space is managed globally by the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, or the IANA, and there are 5 regional internet registries, which you can see here on the map. One of these being the RIPE NCC, which is officially run out of IPv4 addresses in November of 2019. Now, there should be a little asterisk there because while they have officially run out, each RIR can still allocate recovered IP addresses and addresses reserved for a special purpose. And additionally, individual internet service providers still have pools of unassigned IPs, and they have the ability to recycle old IP addresses that are no longer used by subscribers. So while they have run out, they can still allocate IPs. But this does present as a concern, and which is why IPv6 was created to begin with. So let's do a little breakdown of IPv6 versus IPv4. IPv6 uses 128 bits, formatted in hexadecimal, grouped in fours, giving 8 groups or blocks, and it can be shortened. And so you can see here, while it can be shortened, still very confusing and long. But because of that, it allows for a ton of IPv6 addresses to be available. And I encourage anyone to go on Google and just look up the sheer number of IPv6 addresses that are possible. It's a lot, and we're not going to run out. Now, IPv4 uses 32 bits, formatted in dotted decimal, and will likely eventually run out. So that is why we have IPv6. I think people would be very surprised to know that organizations are starting to roll out IPv6. So it is something that you should not be afraid of. You should be comfortable with seeing one, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about that. So let's do a little story time. It was 2019, just got hired as a pen tester. I'm feeling really cool at the time. Just got done with my OSCP and some other courses, so I feel like I can take on the world. I just got assigned an external penetration test, and I'm ready to rock and roll there. Reviewing the scope provided by the client, and I see this. And that's basically my face at that point. Never seen IPv6 addresses used in the wild. Didn't know what to do with that. Don't know how to test against one. The courses that I took didn't really talk about how to do that from an external penetration test standpoint. So I'm dumbfounded. So this leads me into our next kind of topic here: research. If you want to be a penetration tester, let alone just a professional in the infosec world, continuous learning and research is vital. You need to always be learning new topics, tools, techniques. Plus, it's a lot of fun to learn new ways to hack people. But a good penetration tester should always understand what they're doing before they do it. So what that kind of can look like. One way I learn really well is by someone explaining things to me and breaking it down and doing whiteboarding, where we get up, walk over to a whiteboard and literally draw everything out, talk about it step by step. Great way to understand every step of the way, why things work and how they work. Always ask someone with experience for an explanation on something. In my case, for these IPv6 addresses, I asked some of my more experienced coworkers, and nobody has ever seen them. Everyone said, I have no idea. Good luck. So this led me to creating a lab environment. AWS is awesome for quick lab building and breakdown. I was able to create a whole little IPv6 network, some victim machines and an attacking machine, and it was perfect for that. So let's talk about what works, how things work, and then we'll talk about what doesn't work. So some tools work with IPv6 and some do not. Additionally, you are going to have your equipment configured for IPv6 so that you can even communicate with other IPv6 addresses. So that might look like configuring your router and switches and other networking gear. And if you don't want to go through all that, or you kind of can't do all that, then like I used, consider doing AWS, where you can create IPv6 public addresses super easy and figure out how that all works. So tools that do work out of the box, Nmap and WordPress scan work great. Nmap, you can simply do the -6, provided that IP address. With WP scan, it's a little different. You're gonna have to provide that URL flag, and then you need to put your IPv6 around in brackets when you do that. So let's see what that looks like. So WP scan, again, got that URL flag that you're going to provide to it, and then you're going to provide the IPv6 in those brackets. It looks a little weird, but it works. You can go ahead and scan some WordPress sites just fine doing that. Nmap, very easy. Just provide it that -6 flag and all the other flags that you would normally do on your Nmap scan, and you do not need to put it around brackets. It knows what an IPv6 address looks like and how to make that work. So let's talk about what doesn't work. So options for tools that don't natively support IPv6. One great way is find somebody who already did it. There's a lot of people who are starting to stumble across IPv6 addresses, and because of that, they are finding the same thing. Some tools don't work, and they're creating their own version. So go on GitHub or go on Google or GitHub and search, for example, a Noom for Linux IPv6. Somebody made an IPv6 ready version of that, which is linked right there. If it does not exist, consider making your own IPv6 enabled tool. If you have the time, knowledge, and resources, go ahead and make a tool, share it on GitHub, and help everybody out. And even if you don't have the knowledge for it, consider making it anyway, because you're going to learn how, to make it from that. So great learning experience. You can use a tool like SOCAT to forward and receive IPv6 requests through your local host. And this is going to look really confusing, but I'm going to go on to the next slide and kind of explain that. So essentially what we're doing here is we're using SOCAT which establishes two bidirectional byte streams and transfers data between them. So what we're essentially doing is we can scan an IPv6 address by scanning ourselves. So looking at this over here, we can see we're setting up a TCP4 listen on port 80, which is us, and we are going to transfer any traffic between that IPv6 address through ourselves. So then you can go ahead and run Nikto, and you're literally just scanning yourself on port 80. It works. It's weird. Not all tools will work with it. I believe, Durbuster wasn't working too well with that, but some tools will work, and if you need to use that, you can. Keep in mind, you were going to see a lot of traffic spitting out through that SOCAT command, and that's just a big eye opener of how loud and noisy your tools are. Another tool is Hydra. Hydra supports IPv6 out of the box, which kind of surprised me with the -6 flag. You can see an example here of me password spraying an RDP login against the demo admin account, and their password was password123. Not uncommon to see weak passwords in the wild, and then I went ahead and logged into that server. So let's talk why this all matters. Attack surface might be wildly different between IPv4 and IPv6 addresses on the same exact host. Very important as a penetration tester to cover all your bases, because you do not want to fail your client. You want to give them full coverage, because if you miss it, someone else might catch it, and then they can get hacked or compromised potentially. So we do not want that. We want full coverage. So looking at this AMAS enumeration here, we are going to output the IP on the domain hacker1.com. You can see here they have IPv4 and IPv6 addresses on the same exact host. And then let's look at this Nmap scan below. So what we're looking at here is a IPv6 version on the top, IPv4 version on the bottom. This IPv6 scan is showing ports 80, 445, 3389, and 5985 open. Very bad, and the scan below that is only showing port 80. So this is very similar to what I saw on my assessment. I scanned a host, and all I saw was, I believe, 80 and 443. I scanned it again, and I saw a whole lot of more ports and services, including 445 being SMB and 3389 being RDP. These should never be exposed to the internet. So very bad. This client was not aware that they had all these extra ports and services exposed to the internet on their IPv6 host, or IP address rather. So let's talk some key takeaways. So not all tools support IPv6 addresses. You might need to find a workaround or make a tool that works with IPv6. These addresses are formatted in such a way that you'll often need to put them in brackets. Here's an example of what that would look like if you were accessing it in a web browser. And IPv6 may be revealing more ports than intended and necessary versus its IPv4 address on the same exact host. So like this iceberg, you want to keep all those ports and services below the surface, behind that firewall, and really limit your exposure. You do not need to be exposing SMB and RDP open. Really important to check your firewall rules, as I just mentioned. What are you allowing in and out on IPv6 that you're not allowing in and out on IPv4? You want to eliminate that low-hanging fruit and make it harder for an attacker. If you're using AWS, it is super easy. I think I learned AWS security rules in probably 5 minutes. It is incredibly easy to just set all of that up and block things that should not be getting in and out. Okay, so let's move forward on the internal pen side of things. What is an internal penetration test, though? We're essentially looking at what an attacker can do from inside of your network. What can an attacker do if they simply connect a laptop or a Dropbox with no privileges? What kind of information can they exfiltrate? Essentially, what can a hacker do inside of your corporate network? So IPv6, let me back up and explain what Windows did with IPv6. It makes sense, however, uh, Windows machines since Windows Vista have IPv6 enabled by default, and it is favored by default. Windows saw an opportunity that IPv6 would be rolling out eventually, and they wanted to get ahead of the game so that all of their devices would be ready for that big switch. However, because of that, a lot of people are not aware that IPv6 is actually enabled and favored by default on their machines, which leaves a big security gap. So Responder, which does LLM&R and NBNS spoofing, is more and more starting to get increasingly remediated by companies because they're doing penetration tests year in and year out, and they are learning that this is a very easy win for attackers. So they're starting to button up their security and remediate that. So while Responder might not work anymore for you, Man in the Middle 6 is to the rescue and will likely work. So before we talk about what it can do, let's talk about how does it work. Man in the Middle 6 will advertise IPv6 is available across the network or domain. It will respond to DHCP version 6 requests and assign victims an IPv6 address. From there, it will make the attacking machine the DNS server. And again, uh, IPv6 is favored on all Windows machines, so it's going to favor that IPv6 DNS server, which is the attacker, and then it will serve a fake WPAD file which requires authentication. From there, using NTLM relay, we can relay those credentials. So, what can we do with all of that? Paired with InPacket's NTLM relay, it is a dangerous force. Attackers, again, can advertise IPv6 is available and reply to those requests and DNS queries. It can then relay NTLM v2 hashes to a victim machine, capture those hashes, dump Active Directory information in great detail, impersonate users, add users, and elevate them to enterprise admin, and more. Essentially, what you have here as an attacker is that Infinity Gauntlet. It is a powerful force. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to do a quick demo, but before we do, I just wanted to put these slides up so that if anyone needed to, they could go ahead and pause this and look at it. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to run Man in the Middle 6 alongside NTLM Relay, and this is what we can reasonably expect to see. So let me go ahead and pause, and I'll get that demo environment set up, and we'll see what this looks like in real time. Okay, so let's walk through the basic command usage of Man in the Middle 6 used along with NTLM Relay. And then in a little bit, we'll talk about some kind of information that an attacker can find useful, as well as some follow-on attacks that will break out in another demo right after this. So first off, we're going to use Python 3 with Man in the Middle 6. We're going to use the -d flag specifying the victim domain. And in this case, we're using westeros.local. So I'll go ahead and hit enter and run that. And then with NTLM Relay, we're going to use the -6 flag for IPv6. We're going to use the -t flag for target, and we're going to be authenticating against LDAPs on our domain controller. And then TAC-WH is going to be the fake WPAD file that we'll be serving. The -L will be our where we want our loot to go, where we're going to be dumping that Active Directory information. And then finally, the -OF is where we want to output those captured NTLM v2 hashes. So I'll go ahead and run this, and then we will switch over to our Windows machines. And as you can see here, there's our domain controller with our users, and then we've got a Windows machine here. And I'm going to go ahead and speed up the process by restarting this machine. So as I restart this, we're going to start to see some more traffic, and I'm going to go ahead and pause. And once we start getting that traffic coming through, I will switch back over to Kali and show you what we'll be seeing once we start relaying credentials. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of traffic here. I'm going to go ahead and log back into that Windows machine, which is just out of view. Okay, and we're starting to get a little traffic in here. Went ahead and logged in. and we'll let this go just a little bit longer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this here, shut these commands down, and we'll go ahead and just kind of dissect what came through here. So we can see that we authenticated against LDAPs on the domain controller with the user Paul K. And then if we go down here, we'll see it attempted to create a user, and it actually ended up making two. Ideally, we would want one. We don't need two, but we got two users here with unique and random strings along with passwords. And then additionally, there's a little blurb down here that says, try using DC sync with secretsdump.py and this user. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit here, but first let's kind of talk about what we just saw. So NTLM Relay with Man in the Middle 6 relayed credentials to the domain controller and was able to dump out some information for us in this loot folder. So let's look at some of this information real quick. Go ahead and look at the domain users. We're able to see these domain users and the accounts that it created. We can look at domain users by group. And additionally, we can look at the domain groups. So let's look back on the domain users by group. We can see this Paul Cake account that we authenticated against. They're a member of the IT user group, which happens to be domain admins. And interestingly enough, if you look in the description, you'll see the password for the JSnow account, Ghost123. It is possible, and it has happened in penetration tests in the past, where people and companies will set the password in the description field. So this can be very, very helpful to an attacker to look and review at those description fields. And additionally, there's a little Easter egg here. Reset all user passwords to Westeros 1 when necessary, a direction to the IT group. Another common trend with some organizations, they'll reset user passwords when necessary to company name with 2021 or just one after it or just the company name, really giving a lot of users weak passwords who have no intention of changing them because it's easy to remember. So again, looking at these descriptions can be very helpful to an attacker. So looking at some other loot that we've got here, let's open up that those captured NTLM v2 hashes, and we can see that we captured a few hashes here, which we can go ahead and then take offline and crack and attempt to get those in their clear text versions. All right, we're back. So let's unpack what we just saw. We used Man in the Middle 6 in conjunction with NTLM Relay. We authenticated against the LDAPs on the domain controller. We created a new user. We dumped the Active Directory information and saw some pretty cool loot. We captured some NTLM v2 hashes, which we can go ahead and try to take offline and crack. And then we saw a password leak in the description field from one of the loot files. So let's take it a step further. Now what we're going to do is we already created a user account. We're going to take that user account that's been created and try to escalate their privileges to an enterprise admin. And then from there, we are going to go ahead and confirm that and try to dump the ntds.dit file. The ntds.dit file is a file that contains all the account password hashes on the domain, which you can then try to take offline and crack. So let's go ahead, I'll jump back over and we'll see what this looks like in real time. So going back to things, we're going to run Man in the Middle 6 again against the Westeros.local domain. We have NTLM Relay, and only thing we're kind of changing here is getting rid of that loot directory flag as well as the output file flag. We're good with the hashes that we got. We can go ahead and crack those. Paul K is a domain admin, so if we can crack his hash and get that clear text password, we're pretty much good. But let's go ahead and try to escalate the user privileges of this one account that we created. So before we do that, I'm going to switch back over to the domain controller view, and we're going to go ahead and look at this user. So this is a user. We're going to try to elevate their privileges. You can see there's a regular domain user. So switching back to Kali, we're going to run that. And very similarly, I'm going to restart this Windows machine just to kind of get things moving a little bit faster here. And I'm going to pause and start it back up once we get that traffic. Okay, so we're going to log back in with that user account on the Windows machine that is just out of view. And we are getting that success message. We're getting a little bit more traffic. I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And let's dissect this one again. Okay, so we were able to authenticate against LDAPs on the domain controller with user Paul K yet again. We were able to successfully add this user to enterprise admins. So let's double check just to make sure that actually worked. Going to the domain controller, we're going to refresh our user list. Open this up, and he is a member of enterprise admins. So that did work. We were able to successfully use NTLM Relay with Man in the Middle 6 to elevate a user that we created through the same tool to an enterprise admin. Enterprise admin is an admin of all domains, which is higher than domain admin. So it's a pretty big deal. A very powerful tool again. So now we're going to switch back over to Kali. And another example of an attack I wanted to display was, let's look back at this. Try using DC sync with secretsdump.py and this user. So what does that mean? We're going to use secretsdump.py, part of Impacket, and we're going to use that new account that we created. And we are going to try to dump the ntds.dit file, which will allow us to get all the domain users' hashes. We have hashes of the whole domain, which we can go ahead, take offline, and attempt to crack. This is very bad, very powerful, and this is just yet another way that an attacker can get full control over your domain and your network. Okay, so like we just saw, we were able to successfully authenticate against LDAPs yet again with the user Paul K. Created that user, made them an enterprise admin. We verified that, and then we went ahead and dumped the ntds.dit file. Very bad, very impactful, and like I said, infinity gauntlet. All right, so let's talk a little defense here. First one being, consider disabling IPv6 across the network if it is not necessary. Let me speak on that a little bit. However, I would recommend testing this out before actually doing this. And monitor any network traffic or any issues that it might cause. In the research that I did, I've read that there can be unintended consequences. However, I don't know what those are because I have never disabled IPv6 across a large corporate network. However, it can be a good remediation, and I would consider testing it out first, or if you are going to roll that out, monitor your network for any issues it could cause. Next, require SMB signing on all hosts through GPO. There's a bullet that should be in here, but consider setting a DNS entry for WPAD to black hole that traffic. If WPAD is not in use internally, disable it via group policy and disable the WinHTTP auto proxy SVC. Enable both LDAP signing and LDAP channel binding. And then lastly, add administrative users to the protected users group to prevent their account from being used in an impersonation attack. More can be found in these links here. Both these two blogs have a lot of knowledge and wealth on Man in the Middle 6 and using that. And then there's a great video by the Cyber Mentor on domain admin via IPv6 takeover, which kind of shows everything and going back full circle again. So to conclude, IPv6 is being used more than many people might think. Organizations are starting to roll it out, and organizations are using it by default, and they don't know it. Most people are because of what Windows did. So additional attack surface may be available that you're not aware of, and this is applicable to both attackers and defenders. Man in the Middle 6 attacks with IPv6 are becoming increasingly more common. One of my buddies actually was just talking about how he got record domain admin for him in 20 minutes using Man in the Middle 6. So penetration testers and hackers are starting to use this tool, and it is becoming a quick and easy win for them. And lastly, do not fear the IPv6. It is happening. It is here. Um, it is not scary. So become familiar with it. Again, set up a lab environment, get it configured, play around with it, learn how to use tools with IPv6, and enjoy it. It is very helpful for an attacker to know all this. Lastly, I have some references here. I will be posting these slides and all of these links on my website. I'll probably make a post on LinkedIn as well. But a lot of great references and resources that help me build out this talk. And additionally, I've posted some of these GitHubs for all the tools that you can go ahead and use. So um, with that, I'd like to thank CarolinaCon for allowing me to have this talk. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I look forward to playing in the CTF and listening to all the other talks after me. So thank you very much for tuning in. And again, looking forward to the rest of the conference. Hello, everybody, and thank you for virtually tuning in to my talk. My name is Matt Schmidt. First off, I'd like to thank CarolinaCon for putting this all together virtually. I'm sure it was not easy. Um, and I can't wait till we get back in person and can all nerd out again together.
Okay, that was Rumham's talk. Your IPv6 is showing. Thank you, Rumham. And as he mentioned, that was submitted at last year's con. We're really glad he could come back and give it this year online. That's going to be it as far as talks go for tonight. If you haven't checked out the CTF yet, please do. Tomorrow we're going to start again at 10 a.m. with the talk Hack in Your Sleep by David Hunt. And we hope to see you all there. If you have any questions about any of the talks or you have any questions for the speakers, join us in the Discord chat. Otherwise, we will either see you at the CTF or see you on the talk tomorrow at 10. Have a good night.
was told so many stories, and I kept them in my stomach. Lies, the truth, fake smiles and blood money. I lost cause at a loss for words, trying to keep my tone down. What I'm saying's absurd, unusual, the context unique, buried in the depths of metaphorical speech. A hidden message. Pull the infinite strings, reconnect the ends, and pretend to justify the means. Parallel, we're reading the same page. Turn days into literature, simple as loose change. It was perfect, or at least that's what I'm told. Courage is dead, spending my life fearing the cold. I was useless, feeling like dead weight, plain as day. Introducing when handshakes. Originality was spread across the board. Intricate self-worth, I'm searching for more. I swear rain doesn't fall on my fields. It takes a drought to avoid all the secrets that I concealed. Hidden within the dust covered land behind the city. The street lights are dim and the fog is always walking with me. It's nothing new, my eyes adjusted to the scene. Flickering on and off, it's just the daily routine. I grab a hold of time, forcing not to leave. The weeds grow sporadic and my home is where I'm quarantined. Thinking less, move the top to where the fuel rests. Giving all I got to breathe life to the common sense. Moving the top to where the fuel rests. Giving all I got to breathe life to your silhouette. Silhouette, 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 silhouette. Each one of us has our own destiny. A place where we come from and a place where we're going. Sometimes what we see or touch might be rough or rigid. Like a wax painting a sound, stressed to fill the holes in the life we've been living. And each one of us has a story, different plots intertwined and connected. We pass in the street, but all we notice are the vibes that are reflected. Question is, do we take or deflect? It seems heavy, but when I roll my hands was steady. The whites of his eyes seen from the paper till I was ready. Frustration became more common than being calm and outcast. Walked in the motion of every song till it fades. I washed away the shades of color, peeled back the winter, bringing light to my summer. I spent the longest time trying to decide on who to be. My destiny manifests, my mind's in the open sea. See, I feel better when I'm alone. Escape my own past, creation of time zones I flipped. See my eyes focus on every trip. Reaching for the sky becomes harder with every hit till it clears. The smoke settles on all my fears. Rain drops and covers the remains of every tear that I flip. See my eyes focus on every trip. Reaching for the sky becomes harder with every hit. With every hit, every hit, every hit.
same time have a certain intellectual capacity. And so it turned out to be more or less a jazz party.
This is Travel. This is displaying. This is rather funky. This is rather funky. This is rather funky. That I'm displaying.
Part one. Jazz. Record.